Welcome to With Love Men, where we dig deep into what it truly means to be a man today. I'm Jake Fishbein.
And I am Nick Papadopoulos, affectionately known as Coach Nick.
Together, we've led men's groups for a combined 25 years.
And we've also written a novel about a fictional men's group and the impact of this type of work and this type of conversation.
Yes, we have, and it'll be coming to you all soon, so stay
Yes,
tuned.
indeed. Yes.
This podcast is another space, in addition to our book and the men's group we run, The Arena, where we have real conversations about vulnerability, courage, and connection. No masks, no pretending, just honest talk about being men.
And as we do at the start of every men's group session, take a deep breath in, take it in, take it in, take it in, and let it out with some sound.
Ooh,
Get your feet grounded on the floor. Step into the arena with Jake and myself, and let's get started.
let's do it. So, as our listeners know, we always prepare a number of questions. We do hot seats in our men's group, and we like to do mini hot seats here on this With Love Men podcast. Today, before I kick off with a question for you, Nick, I have three statistics that I want to read.
Should we
And
give everyone the name of the podcast so they have some context?
they're going to have context in just a moment. And to
Okay.
be fair, they'll click on the name when they decide to listen to the podcast. So, for those of you who already know what you're getting in for, this won't be a surprise, but
Right.
we're going to talk about men in pornography today.
Yeah.
And it's not a topic actually that comes up very often in our men's groups. And it's one of the reasons we decided to have a conversation about porn in a recent group setting.
Right.
And in preparation for that, we did a little bit of research and came up with three really interesting statistics. There are a lot more, but three stood out to us, which is 91.5% of US men aged between 18 to 73 reported consuming porn sometime in the past month. That's basically everyone,
Right.
which is pretty wild.
Right.
And that for many men, around 56%, porn acts as a stress reliever and a form of sexual relaxation. So men actually use porn to regulate their nervous systems to
Right.
feel more relaxed. And finally, for men under the age of 35, 23 are reporting erectile difficulties with their real life, physical,
Right.
real world partners tied to their heavy porn use. So
Got it.
not only is it affecting people's brains, it's actually affecting their intimate relationships, which is why we want to have this conversation.
Exactly.
So to kick it off, first question for you is when did you first encounter porn and what did it teach you explicitly or implicitly about sex, women, or yourself?
So my first experience with porn happened uh, right around the age of 10. And I was introduced by it. I had a teacher, science teacher, gym teacher. He was also the school's scoutmaster for Boy Scouts. And he ultimately sexually molested myself and many others, many of my friends and others within the community. And he used porn. Back then, it was magazines, mostly magazines, um, cards, with pictures and images of naked women. Um, there was some video, those old VHS type, but mostly magazines. And so he used um, he used all those images, if you will, to titillate us and to enroll us into trusting him, right? We were kids of immigrant parents, an immigrant community. Most of our fathers were working very hard, very long days, were distant, dealing with whatever they were dealing with. And so he used porn as a manipulation to get into our space, literally, physically, spiritually, emotionally, all of that, right? Um, so my first experience was really it was a form of manipulation and dominance. Now, what happened simultaneously is that I had one of those magazines in my room, and my mom found that magazine and under my bed and told my dad. My parents were, I mean, my mom's still alive. She, very, very religious. And this was a Sunday morning. And, my mom told him that Sunday morning, right before breakfast. And he came up to my room and he tore my room apart. I mean, violently, in a scary way, broke things, yelling, literally yelling, the devil's in our house, we got to get rid of the devil. I mean, I know it sounds crazy, and it felt that way. And the significance of that is twofold. One is there was great shame attached to exploring sex, right? My dad is telling me that the devil's in our house. You've embarrassed your mother. This is terrible. You have a younger sister. How dare you do this? How dare you bring this evilness into the home? So there's shame that all of a sudden now I've connected to sex. The other is that it pushed me towards the perp,
Mm.
right? And this is a similar experience many of my friends had. Again, we're 10 years old, so we're highly impressionable. So now I know it's not safe to go to my dad and or parents to talk about sex or to get access to, learning about it. And looking at magazines would have been one way, let's say. Now I'm being drawn and pushed to the perp. And so my first experience, the net of everything I just shared is sex. I'm sorry, pornography was used for manipulation, for dominance, and there's shame attached to it. And it impacted, and it still does, it's impacted my life around intimacy. The journey around intimacy for me is that sex is about dominating or being dominated. Sex is about, winning, uh, dominating, taking over the person's mind, taking over their soul. Um, what's missing there is intimacy. What's missing there is authenticity. What's missing there is vulnerability. What's missing there is deep, meaningful, delicious connection. And so I have a very unhealthy relationship with porn, thus sex, thus intimacy. So you asked, you got you got a lot there, you
I
know.
did ask, and in fairness to our listeners, I knew
Right.
what was coming because we've talked about this so many times, and every time that you share about it, especially publicly, I'm so impressed with your willingness and openness and vulnerability in sharing these really challenging moments. I know you've been on television to talk about what happened, and
Yeah.
it's strikes me as one way of rewiring your relationship to intimacy is by talking about it, not keeping it in the darkness, not keeping it
Right.
in the shame.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Jake. I have gone public in a number of places, including, as you said, in the news. And really, the purpose is twofold. One is to disrupt the shame, to not hide it metaphorically under the mattress, if you will, or behind closed doors, where it happened often with the perp, right? To get it out in the open. Because I do believe that is part of the process for healing and creating something different. The other is to encourage others to do the same, meaning to encourage others to talk about whatever their relationship is to porn. Um, whenever we have done this conversation around porn, and we just did a men's group session earlier this week, it always produces a very heavy environment, a very heavy energy. Um, there's a lot of sadness, there's a lot of heaviness around it. And it really, I appreciate men going there, and it also just hurts me that so
Mm.
many people are hurting, like I have, like I've hurt. I, I've been hurt, if you will, and carried that, and I've also, as a result, hurt others. So I appreciate, you asking me that question and having an opportunity to bring it up here as well.
Absolutely. And before you ask me my question,
Hmm.
something that I was thinking about as you were sharing, and especially what you just said now about you were hurt and in turn you hurt others, that so many people, especially in the dating scene, talk about their challenges. They talk about
Yeah.
being ghosted. They talk about someone seemed to really like them and then disappeared or said some nasty things, or they slept together and then one of them just, again, ghosted. It seemed like they were used. And well, none of that behavior is decent or good or acceptable or just justified
Right.
because it's important to treat humans with kindness. And I say that I've ghosted people before,
Right. Right.
that all of that behavior is driven by some experience in the past.
Yes.
And so many of us struggle with intimacy.
Right.
And so as I see people asking, well, why is this person doing this? Or why did this person treat me this way or that way? They've got their origin story too,
Right.
that they may not even be aware of why they're challenged with intimacy.
Yeah.
That very few people, I believe, wake up in the morning thinking, I'm going to go be an asshole
Right.
to the people in my world.
Right.
But they get triggered and they react and they be assholes. And I say that having done that myself, and I think of myself as a pretty nice, kind person who tries not to hurt people.
Correct.
And I've hurt people by trying to be a nice, kind person.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you've heard me say this. When our back is against the wall, the pressure is on. That's when we go to our winning strategies from the past. And often those winning strategies revolve around protecting ourselves. And so, for me, again, I can speak for myself. Uh, you know, I was dominated, I was manipulated, and I was shamed. And so when my back is against the wall, that's the default. And that's why it is important to have these types of conversations and get it out in the open to be able to acknowledge that, regardless regardless of how you feel about it or regardless of what's been created, it's important to acknowledge it. It really is. And to own all of it. I mean, I own it, right? It's my experience. And yes, it's also made me who I am. I mean, all of it, the positive, the opposite, in between, right? It's all of that. So you could keep me on the hot seat the entire time. So I'm gonna switch tables here, if you will. Is that the right term? Switch turns? I don't know. You get what I'm saying.
I know what you're up to. I'm
You know
ready.
what you
I'm
know what
ready for
I'm
the
up
hot
to.
seat.
Um, you started by saying that we often don't talk about pornography. We often don't talk about sex in our men's group sessions. I've been leading and facilitating groups for almost 20 years, and I could likely count on one hand how many times we've talked about it. I mean, real simple question. Why? Why doesn't it come up? Right? We talk about other things. We talk about, someone's relationship to their spouse, their partner, their parents, their kids, their career, money. I mean, we can talk about a variety of things. No one ever just says, "Hey, by the way, guys, I've gotten myself into some financial trouble, watching too much porn," because we've had men in our group have a financial impact where they went bankrupt because of it. Why doesn't it come up? I mean, because it's so much part of people's lives, or for many folks.
It's a great question, and I have a few hypotheses about why porn, why sex doesn't come up often in our groups. And it's interesting because I talk to other people in the men's work world, and they say sex comes up a lot. Or I
Mm,
talk to women, and they mention, they are very curious, like, is that what we predominantly talk about? And it's not. And we've had to force the issue at times. We've
right,
inspired it because I know both of us had our own journeys with sex and
right,
talking about it. I know for myself was so valuable in a men's group setting in having that conversation because it took away a lot of the shame and the embarrassment that I felt.
right,
And this was, a number of years ago, about 6 years ago. But when I think about our group in particular and why men in particular talk about sex, talk about porn in a joking way, because that is how it will come up in our group,
right,
is it feels very vulnerable to be honest about a relationship with sex. And there's so much shame and embarrassment attached to it. You mentioned how heavy the group felt on Tuesday night. And I think that, aside from one person who felt very lit up and just was like,
correct.
I like porn, like I use porn with my partner. It's a way I feel self-expressed.
Right.
Like he was having a great time, and
Right.
everyone
I learned
else,
from it.
I
I get
learned
ideas
from
from
it.
it.
Exactly. Everyone else was heavy and talking about experiences like yours, where they were caught early on or shamed. And I think that's one big reason is
Right.
the shame around porn and sex. And then the feeling of also shame of talking about it with men.
Yeah.
That, and I'll speak from my own experience because I don't know anybody else's, but growing up when I was in high school and then college, whenever men would talk about sex or getting laid or any of it, it felt very braggadocious. It
Right.
didn't really feel totally honest. I wasn't having sex, so I felt shame and embarrassed that I couldn't join in.
Right.
And there was never that conversation of like, oh, I don't know what to do, or I'm having this problem, like I'm not lasting long enough, or I'm lasting too long, or, I saw this porn the other day and it really upset me.
Right.
That I remember in college watching porn, and I don't really watch much of it anymore. It's not because of my experiences over the years and how I discovered it, and then there's one moment in college, and I don't remember the day, but I remember it was my junior year, and we lived alone we had an apartment. There were four of us in an apartment, and I was the only
Okay.
one in the apartment, and so I was, you know, unwinding
Right.
a little bit and what
Here's the opportunity.
here's the opportunity. And I remember
Shut the shades.
shut the shades, lock the doors, although we didn't lock our doors at Kenyon. But,
Right.
um, and I remember watching it and then thinking about the women that I knew and picturing them in
Mm.
circumstances like that. And it made me feel really gross.
Hmm.
I was like, I have women friends. I have women that I have crushes on. I
Right.
have women that I deeply care about. And here I am watching this content that is very degrading for
Right.
women. And I was not watching like hardcore violent stuff. It was very vanilla.
Yeah.
And yet it was still this experience of like, that's gross. Like something
Hmm.
about this just does not sit well with me.
Right.
And yet I certainly didn't feel like I go to any of my friends and say, hey, have you ever had an experience where you've been watching porn and you've thought about the women you know, like in a similar situation? Like,
Right.
didn't even enter my brain because we didn't talk about it.
Right.
And even today, I have friends and porn will come up and it'll always come up in a joking way. And that's what men do when they're uncomfortable, is they joke.
Yeah.
It's that way of blunting the vulnerability, of blunting the embarrassment, of blunting the shame, but still talking about it, still acknowledging like we have this shared experience. But we're not going to talk about what we like to watch or how we feel afterwards or how it impacts our view of women.
Right.
And I think those are the questions that are so valuable because we did in the session, we asked everyone to raise their hand if they'd watched porn sometime in the last 3 months. And
Hmm.
there are 21 people on the call and 19 or 7, 18, 19 people raised their hands.
Which aligns with the 91% plus, right? That you referenced at the beginning of the podcast.
Exactly. And even the men who didn't, they still have a relationship with porn. They still
Yeah.
have a relationship with sex, and it's impacting us all in some way. Me who
Right.
doesn't like it, it's impacting me in some way.
Right.
And other men who watch it frequently, or even the man who's like, I friggin' love it, like impacting him in some way. And so I do believe it's that the fear of vulnerability, the fear of being shamed, the fear of acknowledging why or what we like in front of
Right.
other men is, at least in my experience, and maybe this is different for men in other communities, is certainly the experience I have in a lot of the men I know.
Right.
It's very rare to talk about this is what I like, either in pornography or in sex itself.
What's the impact of that, Jake? So you, like as you said, you always felt uncomfortable, using the experience of college, right? Going to your friends and saying, "Hey, have you ever felt, icky or uncomfortable? You have a sister, your mom, whatever, right? And even now, right? What's the impact of not talking about it, not talking about what we do like, or, hey, I really like, threesomes, or I saw this. on the video, and that seemed kind of interesting. Has anybody tried it, or what do you all think, right? I mean, what's the impact of that?
I'm imagining there are a number. The two that jumped into my mind right away are one, it keeps it all in the dark. So it keeps the shame involved in the conversation.
Right.
It means we're not talking about the things and not talking about our lives to the fullest. The second thing is it robs us of a lot of fun.
Mm,
That I was watching the guy share about his relationship to porn, how he likes to use it with partners, and it's like he was having fun
right.
with this conversation, and
Right.
sex gets to be fun.
Right.
It People like sex, like they like intimacy, people like porn, and it gets to be a fun thing, not just a pleasurable experience. And I think that is what ultimately is the impact is so I'm not talking about it with my friends or with my girlfriend. Like we're missing out on an opportunity to have fun with things
Right.
and to lighten the load, lighten the feeling around sex and intimacy is I think it even when I think about porn, I think about it with a negative connotation about its negative impact on men, particularly,
Right.
versus looking at what are the opportunities inside of it.
Yep.
And listen, there's a lot of really bad porn out there. It's tied to human trafficking.
Right.
Like there is some really bad stuff that's impacting, especially how young people are engaging in sexual activity because they're being introduced to it through porn, and
Right.
it's like it's not, there's so much that's not good, and yet only focusing on that maybe robs us of the 10% that could be really fun and different and exciting.
Right. Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah. So let me see. I have a lot of questions here. Here's a good one. We touched on it a little bit, but I'm curious from your experience, having worked with men for so long, what do you think most men are actually looking for when they turn to porn?
That is a good one. I was thinking in some ways, again, this is a hypothesis, right? Not 100% willing to be wrong. I do believe there's a worthiness or lack thereof inside of this conversation or inside of a man turning to porn. Um, when I say turn to porn, I'm not talking about, I don't know, if you do it, I don't know what casual would mean or what, I, and at the same time, I think we know if someone goes once and looks, right, or you do it with a partner right before you have sex or something, or you just want to check it out, you're bored or something like that, or you're trying to wind down, whatever it is, right? I, I I believe when it crosses that line and it becomes an addiction, and I have seen it become an addiction, as I referenced a few minutes ago. There was someone in our group who bankrupt themselves because they were watching so much porn. And oh, by the way, in that particular men's group, what got revealed once that person shared, which again, that's why it's so important to share and acknowledge, there were easily a half dozen plus men who said, oh, by the way, yes, I have an issue as well, or I have an unhealthy relationship. And they ended up doing, 1 month of, not watching porn, not masturbating as a way to rewire and reset themselves. So to go back to your question, I say there could be a lack of worthiness because porn is a place where you go and you hide often and you're more inward, right? This is where you get to. I think I think we convince ourselves as men that this is where we can explore all of our idiosyncrasies and all of our quote unquote weirdness. I like to do fill in the blank, and I don't think anybody else would buy that or would agree to that. I mean, my partner's already told me that they're not into, again, fill in the blank. And so it becomes a case of not actually making powerful, clear requests about what you want, who you are, what's important to you. Look, when you make a request and or share with someone about what you want to do, what you're interested in, or what you're looking to enroll them into doing, whatever it is. I mean, it could be sex related or just going to the movies. Obviously, it can the answer you're going to get back is yes, no, or a renegotiation. And my experience is that men generally have an issue with getting a no, getting the rejection. You referenced that about the rejection. And so they go to it turned to porn just like they turned to, going to a strip club. Um, because that's where I can live out all my dirty fantasies and all my weird, idiosyncrasies that again, if anybody really knew what I was into, right? If people knew I was into, group orgies, oh my goodness, I would be ostracized out of my family or out of my relationship or out of my community. And so everybody sort of falls in line, right? And part of falling in line is you now lead a double life.
Mm,
You're leading a secret life. And so you're not fully expressed because you're actually not telling the people who matter, your partner, right? What you want or what you desire or what you're just at least willing to explore or try. And so the short answer is I believe it's an unworthy conversation that I'm not willing to stand up and say
mm,
something. And part of the unworthiness is also to stand up and say, I have an issue, right? To say that I have an unhealthy relationship with sex or intimacy. Look, I have and have had a life of an unhealthy relationship with sex and with intimacy. And that's something that I literally deal with every day, every moment. Like right now, talking about it. And I believe people think it's easier, men in particular really think it's easier to just go and hang out in the dark. Like, we were kidding before about shutting the shades and locking the door, that somehow it'll all just go away, or it's okay if I'm in my weird little world over here. And I believe it does even more damage because ultimately you're perpetuating the shame because as we've said, always, quoting Brene Brown, shame lives in darkness, it grows in darkness. Um, uh, you create more distance from your partner. I shared this with you. In one group session, a man once said that, he has an office upstairs from the kitchen in his home. And, the kitchen obviously, it's where he said in particular where his family would congregate. And his office was upstairs, right above the kitchen. And he would watch porn for hours while his family was downstairs cooking, getting, prepping a meal or, starting to get things together or just hanging out, having a cup of coffee and talking. And he felt so awful. He felt
mm,
so ashamed, yet he kept doing it, right? And so literally he's about 15 steps away from just coming down and saying, hi, I love you, or I've got an issue. Yet he was upstairs, right? Um, hiding and getting lost inside of this world that made him feel worse in the end.
mm. It's such a great, I mean, great is the wrong word, but it's such
Right.
a powerful illustration of the impact that stepping away has on men
Yeah.
and on relationships. And as you were speaking, I was thinking about the world we're in and entering into where AI is becoming such a larger factor. And
Right.
I've certainly heard men say, I've heard women say the same thing, but particularly men, I don't need to be in a relationship. It's easier for me to like go to porn and have like AI relationships. And a lot of people are beginning to have AI relationships, and not every artificial
Right.
intelligence has the guardrails of ChatGPT.
Right.
And I remember feeling so sad when I heard, I think it was an article in the New York Times about this a couple years ago about someone who just was like, there's no real point for me to go have relationships anymore. Relationships are hard.
Mm,
Like this is easy. And our world is becoming one where it is actually getting harder to have real
I
relationships.
know. I know.
And it's so much easier to go to ChatGPT or to go to an AI therapist or an AI counselor and say, these are my problems, or go to Reddit. And I mean, at least you're interacting with strangers, but it's
Right.
still not face to face. It's not human to human in some
Yeah.
ways. And I'm thinking about what you're saying about porn and men basically taking themselves out of the world.
Yeah.
And we always talk about how the world happens out here, not
Yeah.
in our heads, and how incredibly important it is that, yes, it is easier to go to Pornhub and have yourself a good time without interacting with another human being. And it's easier to talk to AI about your problems because you don't actually have to be vulnerable with
Yeah.
another person.
Yep.
But neither of those is a human to human interaction. Neither of those is real, and it may be harder, but that challenge is what makes relationships worthwhile.
Agree. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I had something I wanted to say, based on what you just shared, and it just escaped me, and I don't know why I'm saying it out loud, but um, I mean, yeah, it is fascinating. That me, this is what I wanted to say, that men have been socialized where our default is, again, when we feel pressure, right? When our back is against the wall, when we're feeling doubt, we go inward, which most folks would call the cave. And I really believe that when our back is against the wall and feel pressure or feel inadequate inside of sex, we go inward, which is what you were just referencing, and porn is the place to do that. The strip club, the sex club, well,
Mhm.
not the sex club, the strip club specifically, is the place that men often go to, right? Because you're in your head, right? I mean, especially with porn, you're not, I mean, generally speaking, I mean, I understand there are some instances where you can interact with someone on a webcam, and that in itself has caused problems with men that we know who have been scammed, when they've, uh, taken that path. But I do think porn just perpetuates this default that men go to, which is I'm going to go into the cave.
Mhm.
And when men go into the cave, man, it is detrimental to everybody, including themselves and the people around them, including even work. Because if you're watching a lot of porn, it is going to impact you. It's going to impact your energy. I mean, we've known men who have watched porn for hours and hours into the night. And so now you're going to work the next day. You're not sharp. You're completely distracted. You also have, if you have, add the fact if you have any shame around what just happened, or you realize I just spent $1,000 downloading X number of videos for 4 hours, right? You're completely distracted from work. You're likely going to make more mistakes. You're likely not going to connect in the meeting with somebody in the way that you would have normally connected with them. So there's an impact on everything in your life.
Mhm.
Let me ask you this question. I wanted to ask it the other night in our group session. We talk about porn, and I believe most people have a visualization of what that is. There's certain websites, for whatever preference or interest you have, right? It could be threesomes, it could be a certain ethnicity, it could be men, women, I mean, whatever. There's a variety, there's a flavor for whatever it is that you prefer, right? I want to ask you, what relationship does social media have inside of porn? Because when I go on Instagram, for example, I can go look at a photo of any woman for that matter. It could be even somebody that I know. If I look at a couple of different people, all of a sudden I've got a whole algorithm filled of women who look now the same. Forget about if I click on somebody who's in a bikini or wearing something provocative. Now I've got a string of, right? What role does that play inside of pornography from your perspective? There's TikTok where you have also a lot more of the dancing and all of that, the performance piece of it.
It's I think it plays a role and it's connected. And I don't know the science of it, but I would imagine it's hitting the same dopamine centers in the brain.
Mm,
And sex sells. That's not new. Sex has been selling for thousands. I mean, we have recorded history for a couple thousand years, 3,500 years. I think sex has been selling since then. Prostitution has been around since then. You look on the Roman graffiti and you could be in a bathroom stall in Alphabet City. It's the same 2,000 years later. And the proliferation, I think that's the right word, of like easy content online with social media is crazy. There was definitely one point when I was single a number of years ago where my entire Instagram feed was mostly attractive women.
right.
And like as a single person, it was like, yeah, I like looking at this, which
Right.
even feels like cringy to admit, but
Yep. I'm with
it's
you.
it's true. And it's definitely hitting the same dopamine centers, but feels less dirty because it's not
Mm,
sex. And it definitely
hmm
feels more permissible
hmm
it's like, oh, it's just some hot woman on my Instagram who maybe I know or maybe is an influencer who likes the same baseball team that I do. And, the excuses up the
Right.
wazoo of like why I'm following this person, but it's hitting the same centers and certainly can have the same effect of taking someone out of their reality and taking them inward. Because talk about spending 4 hours on watching porn. I think it's pretty normal for anyone to spend 4 hours in the endless
Right.
scroll on Instagram or TikTok. Then that goes across the board for non-pornography. It's all hitting that same dopamine center. And with the algorithms these days, as you were explaining, describing, like you click on one thing and everything, it's filling your feed.
Right.
It's hard to look away because it's that addictive mechanism that is giving us the dopamine hit
Yeah.
that we want more of. And as we all know with dopamine, you need more stimulation to feel what you felt before, which is why, turning back to pornography, people end up going into more and more extreme forms of porn because they're looking for that same satisfaction.
Right.
And Instagram and those photos, because there's no nudity, are just titillating enough that leaves you wanting more.
Yeah. Do you think it's a bigger, what's your gut? Do you think it's a bigger issue than we even realize? Um, you know, I was on a dating site, right? You've been on dating sites, and I know how addictive those are or were, right? Like when I was
Totally.
when I was single, right? You could literally sit there and whatever you're doing, swiping left, right, whatever it is, you could literally look up and an hour's gone by, right?
If not the whole night.
Exactly. So, and it's almost accepted, right? I mean, okay, it's a dating site. Yes, I overdid it. Oh, shame on me, silly me, right? You say to somebody, "Come on, Jake," you know, and okay, I'll make a commitment this week. I won't look at, so with dating sites, it seems more acceptable. Is it a big issue with social media? Because it seems like it would be.
I think it's a big issue, period. Whether it's social media, whether it's dating sites, they're kind of the same. I
Mm,
remember nights when I was single where I was lonely on a Friday night, like maybe hoping to meet somebody, even though it was really rare to go out with someone same night.
right.
And 6 hours would go by and I would feel gross, like the
Yeah.
same feeling I'd have after watching porn. And it'd be like, what did I just spend that time doing? And obviously, that's driven oftentimes by sexual urges, but we don't know the impact of endless scrolling. It
Right.
has not been around long enough for us to know how is this impacting our brains? How is this impacting teenagers as their brains are developing? What's
Right.
the long-term impact of this going to be in 10, 15, 50 years?
Right.
I can't imagine it's going to be good. I
Right.
don't know what the bad is going to be, but no one can convince me that endless scrolling and social media is going to have a
Right.
benefit for our brains.
Yep.
They are incredible tools. And if they're used as tools, they can be really, really powerful. But I think so many of us, and I haven't been on Instagram in almost 2 years. still on LinkedIn, I still check Facebook occasionally.
Right.
And so I'm not totally off, but what was I going to say? I can't remember what I was saying. I
You
started
haven't
going
see
off.
it's like running rampant here.
It's roaming rampant here. Just that it continues to t it takes me out of the world.
Yeah.
And I would much rather spend 45 minutes having a conversation with you or judging reality television with my girlfriend
Right.
because it's fun, and then, staring at my phone by myself for an hour. And sometimes my girlfriend will be on Instagram and I'll look over her shoulder because it's fun,
Yeah.
but we're doing it together. There's an
Yeah.
element of a shared experience. And I'm frightened for the world in which we are prioritizing people being on their devices versus being with other people.
Yeah.
And I just think that we're going to end up in a really tough space. And again, I don't know what that space is going to be, but I can't imagine it's going to be a good one.
I'm with you, man. So our parting shots?
Parting shots. You want to go first? What are your
Sure.
parting shots, Nick?
I would say t two things. One is that, and you alluded to it at the beginning of our episode, that we have there was a guy in our recent men's group session where we talked about men and pornography, where he seems to have a very healthy relationship to it. In fact, he seemed alive inside of it. There can be a place for it, and so there's no prescription as to what that place is for you because everyone is different and everyone's dynamic, and the lives are different and the relationships we have. And you know, what's healthy and what's not. You described, Jake, you said, hey, when I was on porn for several hours, I felt icky, right? So it's not that hard if we're really being honest versus pretending. We know when it's healthy. There may be a place for it. There may be a place where after a long day, you've had a long week, and you just want to just chill out. And instead of watching the ball game for an hour, you just want to get on your phone or your laptop and you want to just, zone out for a moment. It's always about the come from. That's what we always say in our work. It's always about the come from. Is the come from coming from a place of where you're looking to take care of yourself, soothe yourself, empower, or is it coming from a place of scarcity, fear, anger, right? That's really my big bottom line or takeaway here is really watch what your come from is. Um, and the other is that you deserve to feel good overall.
Mm,
And generally speaking, when we overdo anything, we're going to feel less than. And I believe porn is one of those places where often when we overdo it because we're afraid of intimacy, we're afraid of connecting with somebody, we feel inadequate in sex, we feel inadequate in asking for what we want. We then turn to porn where we're going to spend hours upon hours, we're going to spend lots of money. Um, Take care of yourself in a different way. You deserve to feel better. You you deserve to feel good. You deserve to feel worthy.
I mean, double click on that, and build on it a little
That's a
bit.
healthy
It's a
double
good
click,
thing. It's a healthy
right?
double click, a
Okay.
healthy
Yeah.
double click, copy paste. Um, but to build on that, because as you were saying your parting shot, I was thinking about mine, which is next time you feel called or an urge to look at porn, take a pause and think about, why am I doing this? What's triggering me to want to do this?
Yep.
There's a great book called Indistractable by this man, Nur Eyal, and he talks about distraction and how most of it comes from these internal triggers
Mm,
where we're looking to avoid something.
mm,
If you're going to porn to avoid something,
yep.
it's probably a good indication to pause and not do it. And a couple other things, which is I love what you were saying, that there is an opportunity for porn to have a healthy place in your life. That it's very tempting, and I'm even tempted to demonize it completely.
Yeah.
And then I look at this man in our group who has a healthy relationship with it. And he talked about ethical porn
Mm,
and finding ways where it's not exploitive of women. And I think that's very important too,
right.
if you want to incorporate into it in a healthy way. in your life. And finally, the final parting shot would be the imagination is a really powerful tool.
Yes.
And our world is taking away opportunities to imagine
Yes.
with AI, with pornography. So lean into the imagination,
Yes.
cultivate that. It will actually make you a happier, more productive, more impactful, more creative human to imagine things than just look for the world to serve you images that will get you going. Use your
Yes.
brain, be creative,
And share it.
and share it. And with that, thank you for listening to With Love Men.
Yes.
So,
Thank you, everyone.
with
Thank you,
love,
Jake.
Jake. Thank you, Nick.
With love, Nick.
With love, us. We'll see you next time.
Peace.